And another breaking story.
On May 28, 2026, something went wrong at Florida's Space Coast. A Blue Origin rocket, still attached to its launch pad, exploded during a routine engine test. The fire didn't just destroy hardware. It damaged the only orbital launch site the company had ready for its next-generation rocket. But explosions in rocketry are not unusual. So why did this one feel different?
And he's developing this incredible rocket called the New Glenn. This is a monster of a rocket.
Inside the space industry, the reaction wasn't just concern. It was silence, a kind of calculation. The month prior to the explosion, the FAA had opened an investigation after Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket's second stage failed to reach its intended orbit. And then, just 6 days after receiving regulatory clearance, New Glenn exploded. In what journalists called the second most powerful rocket explosion since the Soviet Union's N-1 moon rocket explosion in 1969. The explosion didn't just hurt Blue Origin. It threatened the United States government's program to return to the moon. Blue Origin holds a $3.4 billion NASA contract to provide the Blue Moon crewed lander as a backup human landing system for the Artemis program. And with Blue Origin's only operational New Glenn launch pad now in ruins, the timeline for getting astronauts back to the lunar surface suddenly looked very uncertain.
NASA is aware of the anomaly that occurred at Launch Complex 36, involving Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. Spaceflight is unforgiving, and developing new heavy-lift launch capability is extraordinarily difficult. We will work with our partners to support a thorough investigation of this anomaly and assess near-term mission impacts.
Read that statement carefully. Assess near-term mission impacts. That's a government way of saying the lunar timeline is now in question. If Blue Origin cannot launch, who lands on the moon? The answer the record points toward is the same answer it has pointed toward for the last decade.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. First stage propulsion healthy.
Good 2 lock in both stages.
Propulsion is nominal.
The Falcon is landed.
Impact ignition.
SpaceX. Founded by Elon Musk in 2002, SpaceX has become the world's most prolific launch provider. With over 300 successful Falcon 9 missions, operational crew transportation to the International Space Station, and the revolutionary Starship program entering service, SpaceX handles roughly 60% of global commercial launches by mass. The company operates on a vertically integrated model, designing, manufacturing, launching, and reusing its own rockets at a cadence no competitor can match. But if Blue Origin started before SpaceX, why does it now look like it's trying to catch up? To understand that question, you have to rewind. Blue Origin was founded in 2000. SpaceX followed 2 years later. At the beginning, the imbalance seemed obvious. Bezos had money. Amazon was already reshaping global commerce, and space was still largely dominated by governments. So the assumption should have been simple. The richest founder should have the advantage. But something unusual happened. The two companies didn't just compete, they chose completely different definitions of progress. For decades, spaceflight was slow by design. Each rocket was expensive. Each launch was rare. Each failure was catastrophic. Then SpaceX changed the equation. Not by building the most advanced rocket, but by making rockets repeatable. Every landing became data. Every failure became iteration. And iteration changed everything. More launches meant faster improvement. Faster improvement meant more launches. A loop formed, not a project, a system. Blue Origin also achieved reusable flight, but its philosophy remained different. Controlled, cautious, incremental. And in aerospace, those differences begin to compound. One begins to question, at what point does caution stop being safe and start becoming slow? Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket was originally set to launch in 2020, but it faced repeated delays. Meanwhile, SpaceX continued launching at a record pace. SpaceX completed 81 launches in the first half of 2025 alone, representing more than 54% of all 149 global launches during that period. Their 2025 launch cadence reached 129 missions, with a 100% Q4 success rate. Blue Origin, well, they had 3 orbital launches in 18 months. Meanwhile, SpaceX was launching so frequently that some missions barely made headlines anymore. Then came the explosion. At that point, the comparison stopped looking like a normal corporate rivalry. It became one company redefining what the industry looks like.
For the delivery of all the LTV awards that we're going to announce today, NASA has selected Blue Origin.
If Blue Origin is behind, why is NASA still depending on it? You see, NASA did something unusual in the Artemis program. It didn't choose one provider. It split the future of lunar landing between SpaceX and Blue Origin. This was a strategic decision, according to NASA, to ensure that the United States is not reliant on a single provider. Blue Origin, despite its delays, is a critical player in the American aerospace infrastructure. Its BE-4 engines power rockets built by United Launch Alliance, a key contractor for U.S. national security missions. The company is already designing a super heavy variant that could, in theory, rival anything SpaceX has built. So even as SpaceX accelerates ahead in launch cadence, the system still leans on Blue Origin's hardware. So the question becomes harder to answer. Is Blue Origin failing, or is it structurally necessary? There was another front in the Bezos-Musk rivalry, the battle for the internet itself. While Blue Origin and SpaceX competed to launch rockets, both men were also chasing something potentially even more valuable: a global satellite internet network. By the time Amazon entered the race, SpaceX had already built a commanding lead. Its Starlink constellation had grown into thousands of satellites orbiting Earth, delivering high-speed internet to millions of users across the globe. That Jeff Bezos wasn't willing to concede the market, Amazon's answer was Project Kuiper, an ambitious plan to deploy more than 3,200 satellites into low Earth orbit and compete directly with Starlink. The rivalry quickly spilled beyond engineering and into the courtroom. In 2022, Amazon awarded a record-breaking multi-billion-dollar launch contract to a group of providers that included Blue Origin. One company was notably absent from the list: SpaceX. The decision triggered a shareholder lawsuit, which alleged that Amazon's leadership had allowed personal tensions with Elon Musk to influence its judgment, overlooking SpaceX's lower costs and proven launch record. But then the story took an unexpected turn. As delays mounted for Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket, Amazon found itself running out of time to deploy Project Kuiper, and the company was forced to do something almost unthinkable. It turned to SpaceX. In 2023, Amazon signed a deal for multiple Falcon 9 launches, effectively hiring Elon Musk's company to help put Project Kuiper into orbit. It was one of the great ironies of the modern space race. To challenge Starlink's dominance, Amazon first had to rely on the company that created it. And in the process, Jeff Bezos ended up paying his biggest rival to help launch the very network designed to compete against him. At this point, SpaceX's advantage is no longer just technological, it's structural. Jeff Bezos has always approached space as a long-term project, something measured in decades, not in quarters. But the modern space economy doesn't operate on decade-long timelines. It evolves in real time. Every launch generates data. The companies that learn faster move faster. That is the system SpaceX built. So the question is no longer whether Blue Origin can succeed. The question is whether the conditions that allowed SpaceX to accelerate have already made catching up structurally impossible.